All right, we're gonna go ahead and start and do some of the things that we don't need quorum for. So I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Alma, if you wanna do a roll call for the three of us.
Good morning. I have Ms. Kane as excused. Mr. Leonard? Commissioner May is on his way. Dr. Northup is on his way. Ms. White? Mr. Williams? Judge Williams? And Ms. Woods is excused. I'll mark the others as present as they arrive.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Williams, can you do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and skip to the treasurer's report.
Okay, if we can figure out the mic this morning. So you guys all have the packet. I'm not going to go through it line by line because it's 30 pages long. Basically, we have retained earnings of prior year earnings. We ended with $21,299,326 in our retained earnings, and we've got $3,700,000 we added to it so far this year. We have $25 million cash in the bank, but out of that, only $3 million is available for future funding opportunities, and that's taking the $3.5 million out for out-of-school time. We have $3.1 million available in the bank right now, and we will be getting more revenue in before the end of the year, usually in July. So if you look at the balance sheet, you're going to see the city of Pensacola CRA is still on here. We did make that payment on March 31st, so that will come off on your next statement. Revenue and expenses statement, there was nothing unexpected or unusual that occurred during the month. We are running at our admin at 6%, 6.27% for admin, 2.68% for tax collector, and 91% for program. And that is in line with what our budgeted ratios were. We have collected $7.8 million in property tax out of the $12.1 million we have budgeted. So we're expecting about another $4.5 million. So expenses, we are right now running at 36% on our expense line, which is right in line with the year. We're at 42% of the year. Okay. If you go through general ledger, it doesn't have anything unusual in it. Our contract schedule shows that we have $14.9 million still in the balance of the 3-year request for the funded programs, and $10.3 million in currently funded grants still being used out there. And year to date, I mean, totally, they have surrendered $6.4 million. That has been reallocated, so it is not available to spend. This year, we have had surrenders of about $500,000 so far. So is there any questions?
So remind us how much we have in the bank to give away for the grants.
So right now, and as of February 28th, we had $6.6 million available for future contracts.
Okay.
If we use 3.5 of that for the current out-of-school time RFP, that leaves us with 3.1. But we will have, I'm estimating about $4 million more coming in.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll wait and do the recommendation for that. And now we will have public comment. And I know we have, I saw a couple sheets. Okay, so we will wait and do those when you tell me to do those. Now we have a special presentation by Ready Kids.
All right, good morning. How are you guys doing today? All right, we're gonna wait for that to come up, and there it is. Thank you so much, Alma. All right, so my name is Christy Craig, and I have the immense pleasure of serving as Executive Director of Ready Kids. And before we get started today, I do want to say thank you so much to everyone who is here today for your time, and especially to Escambia Children's Trust for the work that you're doing in our community, for the support that you make possible for children and families, and of course for the difference that you make in local programs that are making such an impact. So thank you guys for everything that you do. So at Ready Kids, we're on a mission to maximize children's potential through increased school readiness. And our vision is simple. We want every child to start kindergarten ready to learn. One of the ways that we do that is through our Reading Pals program. Reading Pals is a pre-K mentoring program that's been in our community since 2011, and it's designed to boost early literacy and social emotional skills for our youngest learners in a one-on-one setting, providing them not only with important skills for kindergarten readiness, but also boosting social emotional growth as well. And more importantly, provides every child with a personal champion, someone who shows up consistently and who believes in them. Since its inception, we've grown from one classroom at one school to 16 classrooms across 8 schools, serving more than 2,200 children in that time. Each of those children gaining important skills, confidence, and increased readiness for kindergarten. Last year, 98% of the more than 250 children we served made gains on their formal assessments from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And when we looked at children who were on our program last year, those children on average who had a Reading Pal scored 54% higher on their kindergarten readiness assessments compared to students in the same classrooms who did not have a Reading Pal at the schools we serve, which is huge. So the reason we're here today is talk about the site that our Escambia Children's Trust Cares Grant sponsors, which is Brentwood Elementary, a school we were able to start at this year for the first time. We have 25 pre-K students enrolled in our Reading Pals program at Brentwood, and I'm very proud to say every single one of them has been matched with a mentor. Collectively, students at Brentwood this year have received over 450 mentoring sessions. That's 450 individual touch points, 450 opportunities for magic and learning to happen, 450 times a student has had someone show up just for them, and 450 times that a child has had someone say, "I believe in you. You can do this." And our students can do this. So far this year, we've received statewide assessment scores back from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year, and our students have shown strong growth with an average score increase of over 40 points. And that's just what we see on paper. Our site coordinator, Daphne, is on site with our volunteers and students at Brentwood every single day, witnessing this incredible growth in real time. Because our program isn't just about academic growth, but social, emotional, and behavioral improvements as well. When we talk to our kindergarten teachers, they tell us time and time again that if a student can come into the first day of kindergarten willing to sit down, to make friends, to be respectful, to listen to instructions, then they are teachable, and that's really what kindergarten is about. So in real time, when a student has a Reading Pal in pre-K, what we're seeing is that they're building confidence. They're sitting longer. They're more engaged with reading. They're walking in the hallway instead of running, which is a big deal. They're listening to instructions and taking turns. They're gaining trust in new people, and they're lighting up with the learning process. At Brentwood, one student in particular stands out, so I'd like to introduce you to Terenzo and his Reading Pal, Cindy. At the beginning of the Reading Pals program, Terenzo struggled to engage in learning activities. He didn't want to sit in his chair, he showed little interest in reading, and he often chose to stay on the ground, focused on play instead of learning. It's not that he lacked ability, but that learning as it was being presented didn't connect with him yet. In those early sessions, he gravitated towards familiar comforts, especially playing with Spider-Man and Batman plushies, and his books and structured activities were just something he wasn't interested in. It really was a challenge for his Reading Pal to get him to engage. But instead of focusing on that structure, his Reading Pal, Cindy, met him exactly where he was. She got on the ground with him. She matched his energy, and he used what he already enjoyed as an entry point. While they played, she began weaving in small moments of learning, asking questions like, where is Spider-Man from? Identifying colors, and pointing out what letter Batman starts with. They may have been playing, but Terenzo was learning. And it's these small, intentional moments that move the needle. Without even realizing it, Terenzo was being introduced to foundational skills in a way that felt fun, safe, and engaging. And over time, we've seen things shift. Terenzo started to build trust, not just in Cindy, but in the learning process as a whole. And as that trust grew, so did his willingness to participate. He began to sit in his chair for longer periods of time, he stayed focused longer, and engaged in small structured activities. And that's what opened the door for him to start practicing those early literacy skills. Now he's writing his name, he's counting out loud, and he's responding to questions about the stories that he's hearing. Once resistant and uninterested, Terenzo is now not only engaged and actively participating, but excited and very much invested in the learning journey. We're seeing his confidence grow. By building trust first and shaping the sessions around his own unique interests, Terenzo's Reading Pal helped transform his experience into something meaningful and entirely his own. Terenzo's journey is just one powerful reminder that readiness does not always begin with academics. Sometimes it begins with connection, creativity, and meeting a child exactly where they are. And nothing is more important than having someone show up for you and believe in you. This is why our Reading Pals program is such an important part of our community and crucial to the children who need it most. So again, I want to say thank you to Escambia Children's Trust, thank you to the Board of County Commissioners, and thank you to our community who supports this program. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Thank you so much for coming, and we're glad we can help you. So
Thank you so much.
And Dr. Northup is here, and he will take over as regularly scheduled. So we need to do approval of agenda, approval of minutes, and the treasurer's report recommendation.
All right, motion to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And approval of the minutes from our prior board meeting, March 10th. Any additions, deletions, corrections, or other modifications? If not, move to accept.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes will stand as submitted. And down to the treasurer's report, financial report from Ms. Abrams and her team.
So moved.
So we did already go over the financial report. I would be making a recommendation to file the financial report for month ending.
So moved.
Any discussions, questions on the report? Otherwise, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, accepted, and thank you for that. And I also want to apologize to my colleagues here, but also thank the presentation on the Ready Kids program. I appreciate both the presentation and the work you all are doing, so thank you very much for that. Any public comments, Ms. Alma?
I have a few, but they're on particular agenda items, so I will hand them to you as they come up.
Okay, thank you. All right, under business, the first thing is to do with programs and resolution, quality assurance policy and supporting plan resolution 2026-13. And the
All right, good morning, everyone. I know there's a huge plan and we've got a lot on our agenda, so I will just briefly go over. We did have the opportunity to present this to the program committee and only made one slight change since we met with them. But this is what we've been referencing pretty much during 2025 and alluding to us establishing our program assurances. I think you'll appreciate the framework. It's pretty all-inclusive of our everyday work. We're operating in full transparency, and you'll see that it is broken down into a few parts. Looking at our overall purpose and the framework, you all know that we have done many visits to our programs, and we did so without having very firm standards in place that we could measure and have those open conversations and dialogue with all of our providers. So this is what you have before you, is a very much prescribed protocol for us to follow that goes over the expectations of ourselves as well as anyone that we provide funding to. So what you see initially will be our pre-award risk assessment tool. We had an opportunity to use this during our program committee meeting when we had conversations with our awesome legal services team. But what we would do, we would utilize this tool before we would accept any grants and moving forward. It allows our team to go over a few components of this tool and looking at the quality of each of their boards and their programs and organizations. So our first quality area would be our staffing and human resources, briefly looking at their legal status for business, their board rosters, as well as governance structure, their conflict of interest policies, as well as financial oversight policy and procedures, looking at each of their leadership roles, decision-making authority, policies, and procedures. Our Quality 2 area would be the health, safety, and learning environment, very specifically looking at their facility readiness, license or compliant space, as well as their program areas and organizations going through the DCF, School Age Handbook, and all of those protections that are embedded. Looking at their emergency response procedures, their supervision, as well as their line of sight policies and procedures. It's important to look at their procedures for incident and injury response, as well as a formalized plan and policy regarding how they would report those procedures, and the safe entry and exit and sign-in procedures. Our staffing and human resources area 3, looking at the job descriptions and the roles and professional credentials of each of their key staff members. What are their hiring and screening procedures? Looking at background screening and drug-free workplace policies and procedures, as well as their motor vehicle eligibility check, their CDL and/or appropriate transportation license, their staff supervision structure, and nepotism policies. Our Quality Area 4 would be child welfare and protection, looking at their child abuse prevention policies, their mandatory reporting procedures, as well as boundaries and conduct policies, prohibited practices policy, and staff acknowledgement completed of all of those expectations. For Quality Areas 5 and 6, we're looking at their program design and engagement, as well as attendance, dosage, and access. And last, their Quality Area 7, data reporting and continuous improvement. We'll hone in on that continuous improvement and emphasizing that this is not a one and done. We would continue to do this throughout the engagement of their grant, 3 years or however long that is anticipated. Looking at their data collection tools, the reporting processes, data accuracy, use of data for improvement, as well as the staff that is assigned who's responsible for maintaining that data that they identified. The second part is the quality evaluation system. This is going to be a part of our walkthroughs. So Rick and myself, as well as Michael, would be going to programs and looking at different areas. So there are 7 key areas that we would be looking at, assigning a score to, as well as having those ongoing conversations with each of our providers. I'll do a breakdown of the 7 and just move on, but we're looking at the program quality environment, whether it's a safe environment, a welcoming environment, as well as appropriate spaces for program. Staff qualifications and training, looking at their preparedness and credentials and ongoing professional development that would be mandatory throughout their year. Curriculum and instructional quality. We discussed earlier that we would have the IXL, so we know now that we would expect for them to do about an hour a week in each of those areas of math and English language arts. How often are they accessing that curriculum? Attendance dosage and monitoring. We know that we have prescribed amounts of attendance, and that is regulated. The youth development and outcomes, supporting their social emotional growth and measurable progress, as well as family and community engagement and their data use and continuous improvement. There is a program rating scale that goes along with that, and so at the end of that model, we would be adding up the points each time we visit. Our plan is to attend and to have conversations with our programs once a quarter. So we would have, at a minimum, about 4 of these that we would do throughout the year for each of the programs, whether it's OST, mental health, sole source. So you see here that it's broken down, and we would look at from proficient, emergent, and critical to look to see if there needs to be any type of plan that goes along with it or any areas that we would see that may need to be addressed in a timely fashion. Then we have our fiscal compliance and reimbursement. That would be overseen with Tammy and Daniel. They would be looking also on a quarterly basis of those responsibilities that are broken down with these components, looking at their fiscal governance, their board-approved policies and internal controls, their accounting systems, their capacity to track the program, as well as their revenues and expenditures, budget alignment, ensuring all those costs are allowable and reasonable as well as necessary. Their source documentation, maintaining organized records, invoices, payrolls, receipts to support all of their claims that they have submitted, as well as appropriate verification of everything that was submitted. We have our program site audit that will be done by Ms. Alma. She has started that process, but has also created, with the assistance of Ms. Lindsay, as far as looking at there's about 140 check items that goes with her section that's divided into a human resource side as well as a program facility, their facility and safety side. All of those would be closely aligned to the Department of Children and Family, looking at health and safety, supervision, emergency preparedness, staff qualifications, as well as, like mentioned, the alignment with DCF recommendations. All of those areas could end up in a performance or program improvement protocol. And this would be a formalized plans, and this would not be a gotcha kind of a system. This would be ongoing conversations in real time that it's happening. Whether it's a quicker turnaround, like a 15 days, you have urgent components that need to be addressed, or 30 days. And so those program improvement plans could require some interventions immediately, as well as ongoing oversight by our team. The summary of this impact, we're hoping that the public can now see as stakeholders of our accountability. We're hoping to continue to build that community trust, as well as our upholding our expectations of that continuous excellence across the board with all of our programs. I know that's lengthy. You have a copy. Are there any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Any questions? Okay. And this one we need. All right. No further discussion. Motion to approve this resolution, 2613.
We have to wait, sir. Commissioner May just stepped out, so we may need to come back to that.
Okay, so we will come back lacking quorum for that. Let me get that put together then. One thing to note, and for both minutes and otherwise, as we had discussed, that this, for the benefit of our providers and vendors, to notice that there's a component that we will be looking at the time of application, but that much of this is in place on a continuous basis with the intent that it is going to be reviewed by the staff and also participated in by the providers and vendors, with the intent of this being a continuous quality improvement process, and one that will take place repeatedly, not simply at the time of application, with the intent of ensuring optimal delivery of services and care of the children and all that these programs are in place for. So thank you for that. Okay, so the next one will be CMB Vision CARES Grant withdrawal with comments by Ms. Cannon.
Sure. We have met with the executive director at CMB Visions. They did receive a secondary grant to the out-of-school time, their traditional out-of-school time program, to expand Beyond the Bell for older youth, mainly a high school population. Had some success at the beginning of summer, like when those grants first kicked off, and a little bit through the fall season, but the recruitment and continuous services have not been happening. A lot of that is, I think CMB's also figured out that maybe they're better at a K through 8 population, and that's okay. So we've had further discussions, and we want to terminate that agreement so we can deobligate those funds and push them back into the funding pool that we'll need, of course, moving forward. So they have written a letter expressing that request. So if y'all have any questions, just let me know.
Okay, further questions on that?
You said they wrote a letter requesting that?
Yes, sir, it's in your packet.
Okay.
It was just one of those things where sometimes the grants don't pan out the way that you thought, but they just did not have attendance or youth coming this semester. So stepping back away from that grant.
On good terms, so to speak.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, they're still one of our providers, so we had a real heartfelt conversation, but an important one.
All right, thank you. The resolution that we will be attached to will also come back to, I guess, if Commissioner May is able to rejoin us, so that we will have a quorum for that. The next motion is in regards to Boys and Girls Club budget amendment for their out-of-school time program, and Tammy.
Thank you. We reviewed this amendment at the program committee. They are looking to move supplies into their supply line, funds into their supply line. They are expecting to be out of that line item by the end of February. Well, we're out of it at the end of February. And they were going to take it away from the sub-grants and from professional development. They said that they did not have as many staff travel as they were expecting for trainings on the professional development, and they didn't have as much need for the contractor due to reasons of illness and different things, that they didn't use the contractors as much as they were expecting. So this would not change their total line item, but would move $17,000 around between 3 different expense lines. Are there any questions?
Any questions regarding that one? So a motion then to approve the budget amendment without changing the bottom line of the funding. It just is to reallocate funds from
professional development and sub-grants into increasing funding for office supplies. So once again, holding off on that, getting a stack of them. Okay, Boys and Girls Club again regarding their budget amendment request for their mental health program, Mind Time. And
Yeah, this
again,
is a very small request. It's to move $1,200 from other professional services up to office supplies. And that was due to not using as much mental health and yoga as they expected, and needing to purchase 2 additional iPads for attendance tracking under their office supplies. So that's very small, a $1,200 change, if you guys had any questions.
questions?
And just for the record, Ms. Mickles did come and speak at the program committee, so we've already discussed all this.
Yes.
Okay, so that one also will require a quorum. Next, under programs is Legal Services of North Florida contract. Has to do with a request from Legal Services that was discussed at program committee with quite a bit of robust discussion. They were in attendance, able to contribute to that, and an update has taken place. Ms. Cannon?
I think we have some public speakers on this one.
Yes, we do. This is 17. I have one from Ms. Rebecca, and I'm going to slaughter that last name, Chernitsky. Wow, I cannot believe that.
It scares everyone, but you did great. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Rebecca Chernitsky. I was hired in November of 2023 to run the education component of this grant. When we started this project, we anticipated the focus being on helping children with disabilities achieve appropriate education. Our original vision for the educational representation is not what it turned out to be. One, because the Escambia County School District is actually passionate and conscientious about protecting student rights. So we weren't needed as much as we thought in that vein. And two, in working with the juvenile judges, we quickly learned that children in truancy and delinquency court have civil legal needs, which, if addressed, can help them get back on track, help them avoid violations of probation, and ultimately help avoid residential commitment. I just wanted to share a few things that we've worked on over the years. In truancy court, we are often the bridge between the parents and the school district. Our role, as we see it, is to support the district and the school social workers and find solutions, not litigate against them. I've literally been in the courtroom with Ellen Odom, the general counsel of the school district, once, and we were on the same side. We filed a joint motion because a judge had actually ordered a child not to return to school. And we were there to tell him he couldn't do that, which we were successful at. But other than that, this year alone, we have essentially, for lack of a better term, resurrected some statutory procedures in truancy court. The procedures that have existed for years but were not being utilized. One of those is the use of SINS-FINS, which is Child in Need of Services, Families in Need of Services Court. We have gotten all the parties together, the Department of Juvenile Justice, the school district, Judge Robinson, to kind of recreate that court and make that a reality. Additionally, we have pushed for the criminal prosecution of parents who are refusing to enroll their children in school or providing for their education. Prior to this, in truancy court, if truancy court failed, there was no recourse, which has been very frustrating for the school district. They work very hard to get these children to truancy court, and then nothing was happening. Now, they can actually be referred on to an additional court or they can be prosecuted. So that has come a long way with kind of following up on what truancy is supposed to be doing. I receive emails directly from delinquency judges on a weekly basis, appointing me to children who they, and I quote, felt were at risk of worsening legal involvement without some serious assistance. When I'm appointed to these kids, the majority of them have already violated their probation 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and they are looking at being sent away to residential commitment. Many of them have been expelled with no services, and there are literally no other players in the delinquency game. You know, the parents they're tired, they're busy, they're not there, they don't know where to start. There aren't any school social workers in delinquency court. There aren't any guardian ad litems in truancy court or delinquency court. For the past 2.5 years, there's just been us.
Sorry, that's time.
Okay. In year 3 of our contract, we've served over 163 children strictly for educational purposes. And of those in delinquency, 90% of those were successfully terminated from probation and not sent away to programs. I'm truly concerned of what's going to happen to these children if we cease to exist. It's not going to be good. It's going to be more expensive. It's going to be more ineffectual, and it's going to be more detrimental to Escambia County as a whole. So we have really created an amazing
I'm sorry,
program
that's
here.
Time, you have 3
Okay.
minutes.
Oh, and we will continue. We will find a way. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Carrie Crummy, speaking again on the same agenda.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Good morning.
I'm the Assistant Director of Litigation at Legal Services of North Florida and work closely with these attorneys. One of the attorneys who takes a lot of the juvenile cases, the dependency cases in our office, is Angela Holk. She can't be here. She's in court in front of Judge Williams, I believe, this morning. So I'm kind of going to fill in a little bit for her. But I wish she was here. I wish she could tell you about the cases that she has and the really good work that she's been doing. Angela has, she worked for DCF for over 20 years with their Children's Legal Services, representing the department, and she is board certified in juvenile law. I think she's perhaps the only attorney in Escambia County that's board certified. So she brings a tremendous amount of expertise with her, and she's really been able to cut through red tape. There is just one story that she told me that really got to me. There was a teenager from this area who had absconded to Tennessee and had been picked up and was in a DJJ facility up there. The teenager was going to be brought back to Escambia County and placed in foster care. But there was a rumor that there was an aunt who might be willing to take her. The Families First Network coordinator had not been able to reach the aunt, and Angela got a cell phone number. She called the aunt. Apparently the aunt had heard of Angela, was calling Angela, and Angela was able to cut through the red tape, and instead of that child entering foster care at all, she's now living with that aunt, and it is, has been reunified with a family member instead of entering care. We just wanted to highlight the cost savings. Angela gets appointed to children in the early childhood court system, where there are a lot of services for families because the children are so small. She has been appointed to 8 of the 22 children in there, and of those cases, 2 of the children have been reunified with the mother, 2 have unsupervised visits with the father, and none of them currently have an adoption goal. So we look at our data in 2 ways. We look to see if the children can be reunified or placed with a parent again, or with another family member who's adequate, or if that's not going to be possible, we look at the length of time to adoption. In Angela's cases, we can get you the specific numbers, but she's basically dropped that amount of time before the kids are in the adoption process by about half in this county. And that's a tremendous amount of taxpayer savings. In the 2 cases she has where the children have been adopted, she saved over $17,000 based on the boarding costs of that child versus the, the cost of having them adopted right away. So again, we're going to look for other ways to fund her work. With our caseworkers and our paralegal and our attorneys, we've just been able to get a really good hold on some of the situations. And so thank you for your time and all your support.
Thank you. Ms. Leslie Powell-Boudreau with a bum foot, I hope.
Yes, I'm walking a little more than the last time you saw me.
Yes.
Again, thank you for your time. I'm the Executive Director of Legal Services of North Florida, and we limited our speakers to 3. And as you can tell, we have a lot more to say than we're going to have an opportunity to say today. First, to the business at hand, you have 2 letters from me in your packets. One, the extension request that's specifically to be voted on. The extension request will allow us to fully plan for the cases we're currently handling, including case closure where possible. That keeps us within the Florida bar rules and our professional obligations, while also best serving the most vulnerable children who have already been abandoned and forgotten by others closest to them, as you've heard from Carrie and Rebecca today. The withdrawal request, we really don't take it lightly. You can tell a lot of work went into that application. We went through the quality assurance process as was suggested. But we did hear from the programs committee that frankly the money just may not be there, and that there's a lot of uncertainty right now in terms of the future of collections. I know that's a continuing conversation. I heard some things today in the treasurer's report that make me a little more optimistic. But we also know you can't get blood from a stone. So we appreciate the difficult decisions this board makes every day. This was a difficult decision for us. We don't withdraw the application because the work isn't important or because the need has somehow gone away. There is still much work to do. We will continue to seek other means to serve these children, and we will continue to partner with the trust. And as the financial picture comes clearer, we will return with a request. It might be a different version of what you saw before. It might be part of the work we're doing that we can't find other funding for. That sort of thing is what we're looking towards, and I look forward to continuing those conversations. Today, you heard just a snapshot of the impact of the work that this project has done over the last 3 years. There are dozens more stories of children who will be more successful moving forward because of ECT through the work of legal services, because we were there when they needed us most. We have helped more than 300 children over those 3 years who faced some of the toughest barriers to finding a path to success. And ECT should be proud to have supported that work, and we hope that you will be able to again, and we look forward to continuing our partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. We have 2 requests from the legal services. One is regretfully, I think, on all of our parts, withdrawing their request for funding and assuring you all and speaking for the board that it's regrettable on our part of not having the funding with assurance going for the next 3 years forward. And it should be one of the state very much publicly that is no reflection absolutely on your organization and the vital work that you all have been doing, and that the expansion that we would have hoped to have been able to fund if we all had a more certain future before us. So on behalf of myself and the board, thank you all very, very much for what you have done and respect you all for that work. The second part of the request from the legal services is an extension of their current grant to get them through the current school year and through the provision of services to clients that you already have enrolled. And that is the resolution 2617. The program committee recommended approval of resolution 2617, authorizing the executive director to extend the funding agreement with legal services for 2 months through June 30th to more or less, again, complete the representation of these children from the legal standpoint that they have enrolled currently. And so that is what is before us, is Resolution 2617, and we'll need a motion now that Commissioner May has been able to rejoin us, so now we have quorum, so we can begin actually voting on some of these resolutions. So the first one again, 2617. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion, questions, comments on that one? And again, this is the extension of funding through June. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And again, as at the program committee, thank you all for coming and being present. Now, the withdrawal of the prior request will stand simply as a point of information rather than needing a
Correct.
motion or approval. Okay, now we will back up some. Now that we have our quorum reestablished, Resolution 2613, resolution of the Escambia Children's Trust authorizing the executive director to amend Children's Trust Policy Manual Part 2, funding community organizations, creating a subsection 2.8 regarding program quality assurance and continuous performance improvement policy. Motion to approve.
Second.
All righty, that has been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion on that item? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so 2613 carries. Okay. 2614. Resolution of the Escambia Children's Trust authorizing the executive director to terminate the funding agreement with CMB Visions Unlimited Incorporated and to de-obligate any remaining funds thereunder. This was discussed as well. Motion to approve. Any further discussion or questions? And hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so 2614 carries. The next two items we will look at separately. Let me see if I can get them in order here. Great Futures from Boys and Girls Club budget amendment for their out-of-school time program, Great Futures. This was requesting the reallocation of $17,000 from professional development and subgrants to partner programs to office supplies. I have a motion to approve. Any further questions on that? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And then the other was the Boys and Girls Club of Emerald Coast Mind Time. Their mental health program was a reallocation without changing the contract amount, but to take $1,200 from other professional services and apply that into office supplies as discussed. Motion to approve. Okay, any further discussion, questions, comments on that? And hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes as well. Now, that brings us up to Operations Policy Manual Update Ms. Fry and Ms. Neese. And
Yes, good morning.
good
Thank
morning.
you. This is a general update to Part 2 of your policy manual. We're not creating any specific policies. We're just adding additional discretionary language that we believe you already have. We're just making it more specific in the policy. So there's not many edits. There's about 5 or 6. You know, it discusses you have discretionary authority to allocate and provide funds. Just because someone, you know, presents a grant doesn't mean they get a grant. Things of that nature. It also talks about you have discretion to consider where your funds are placed in making any funding decisions. So it's, again, we're not creating a new policy, we're just adding additional discretionary language. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. I know it's hard to read on the resolution what we're adding.
Okay. And reading for the record, Resolution 2615, Resolution of the Children's Trust authorizing the Executive Director to amend the Escambia Children's Trust Policy Manual Part 2, funding community organizations, amending subsections 1.2, 2.0, and 2.1 regarding policies pertaining to funding community organizations and the award of funding to community organizations. And the Policy and Bylaws Committee did recommend approval of this resolution. Motion to approve? Been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion, questions, comments on that?
Dr. Northrup, have we looked at all of the programs? When you look at that 15% administrative cost, is there any program that is even close to that 15% threshold?
We do have a couple programs that do the 15%.
Ma'am?
We have a couple of programs that do 15%.
So after we vote today, if we vote affirmative, who makes certain that program gets that in check?
So we have a policy coming up next which regulates indirect very specifically because we want it to be clear. We don't want to do away with it because it is a necessity for operation of an organization to execute on what we're asking them to. But it's going to be very specific on how they need to, how it should be prescribed, billed, and presented.
I'm not a member of the program committee, so I want to make sure I heard why you got there. So, okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, Mr. Leonard, what you're voting on, Resolution 2026-15, doesn't discuss anything about indirect. It's just general discretionary authority when you're awarding funds and when you're providing funds to programs. So it doesn't, the indirect cost is where you'll see the specifics of that.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes. The next item here under operations is an indirect cost policy, and Ms. Cannon will be speaking on that. We have Tammy Hodo from United Way of West Florida asking to speak in regards to that.
Good morning. My name is Tammy Hodo. I am the Director of Finance at United Way of West Florida. I want to start off by saying thank you for allowing United Way the opportunity to work in the schools to improve health and educational outcomes through the Healthy Schools Escambia program. We are grateful for this opportunity to further our mission through this. I'm here today to address the board and staff regarding the proposed changes to the indirect cost policy. The proposed changes that y'all have set out will require the grantees and contractors to include their indirect cost items as direct cost line items and submit documentation monthly for those expenses. Indirect costs are usually included in grants and contracts at the de minimis rate. For example, United Way receives funds from the IRS for our volunteer income tax assistance program with a 10% de minimis. Our federal and state funds that we receive for 211 and 988 has a 10% de minimis. We are in the process of applying for another federal grant right now. I think it is actually due today, that it has a 15% de minimis. On all of those, we don't have to show any documentation of how we are spending that de minimis rate. This is all federal and state funds. De minimis is simple. It's a Latin phrase meaning about minimal things. It's used to describe something so small and trifling or insignificant that it's not worth considering or regulating. That is the definition of de minimis. We, United Way, are currently submitting 55 to 60 documents each month with our reimbursement request. Requiring us to submit documents for indirect cost is requiring more time from myself and my accounting specialist, which is going to use more funds from our contract, which is taking away from our programming. This could include or could be up to 15 to 20 additional documents, sometimes more, each month. In addition to my extra time and my staff time, this is also going to make more time for your staff to review each and every one of those documents to make sure they align with our budget, which will cost more money, which again reduces money that could be going into programming directly into our schools. Changes like this are going to deter other organizations from applying for funding because it is a burden. And this is honestly, in my opinion, not the best use of our taxpayer dollars, which is always at the top of our minds with this trust. This trust is doing great work in our community. My son, he's a 6th grader, has personally benefited by getting to go on a trip to the Naval Flight Academy with Bailey Middle School earlier this year. He spent a week out there. It was fabulous, and it was all because of programming from this trust. Focusing on these non-issues like indirect cost is only drawing attention away from the good that is happening. Let's bring more attention to the positive instead of trying to change a standard practice, de minimis
Sorry, that's
cost.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now, Resolution 2616, Resolution of the Escambia Children's Trust authorizing the Executive Director to amend Escambia Children's Trust Policy Manual Part 2, funding community organizations, creating a new subsection regarding indirect cost. And we have that resolution in our packet and have heard from Ms. Hodo and others during the consideration and discussion of this policy. Ms. Cannon, have you got additional comments?
Yes, just as Ms. Hodo actually described, those are the way that our policies were reading before. There's been a lot of challenges related to indirect and questions related to how it's being spent. So although I've been contracted federally and state, I know that those are typical contracting practices, the de minimis that she was talking about. However, as we continue to be challenged by the public to be more transparent, we did have to look at this a little differently. We do not want to do away with administrative costs. There does need to be a limit on it, just like we have with indirect, which was up to the 15%. So that is still included in this policy. However, we are defining what those administrative expenses are through this policy and how they need to be accounted for related to, as she was talking about, a lot of paperwork, a lot of backup receipts, if you will, related to how those are spent. So this has been an ongoing request for clarity, and this is our response related to that. So we don't want to eat away at the infrastructure of our nonprofits, but there is also the question of, is it being spent appropriately and within the scope of what our taxpayers would expect? And so that is what this policy hopes to clarify. And it will create challenges. We can't say that this is perfect right now. This is perfect right now for what we know. As we get into this and start producing a review of indirect, we may have to come back and have a conversation about how the policy works, because this isn't a typical policy that you would have related to indirect. So I just want to make that clear.
Whoops. This does require a motion and then a second, and will allow for further discussion following that. So motion to approve. Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any further discussion regarding this item? I know this is one that we as the board have been brought up, and there's even been some discussion among the board members of pros and cons and impacts on organizations, and those that seem to have a good understanding and a good organization to support that and to work it. There are others that there's been less clarity, even on the part of the organization, as well as on the part of the Children's Trust staff, into what is being considered as an indirect cost that the staff, and I will acknowledge several of the board members that have overseen some of the parts of those operations, have questioned as really meeting the definition of indirect cost, and asking for funding of them under that catch-all of indirect cost that have led to the feeling by the board. And I'm certainly leaving this open to my colleagues here to make further comment on this, but that was the basis for this on the part of a number of the board members, of feeling that in the interest of transparency to the public whose money we are stewarding here, that did some of these items that they were considering as, quote, indirect cost, though in comparison a relatively small amount, nonetheless still in an additive form, in a cumulative form, ending up to be a significant amount, and one that we really felt that if the public looked at them and scrutinized them closely, would find fault with some of the things that some of the organizations have considered and wanted to pass on as the undisclosed costs or things, indirect costs. And so that has been our basis. But certainly if there are other of my colleagues here that have other comments or thoughts on our basis for that, it is by no means meant to be adding additional burden as its intent, though we recognize that that may be a side effect of it. But at least until we are able to get some clarification on what all of the providers are submitting across the board as indirect versus direct costs, getting a little better handle on that, and feeling that in the future I can foresee that potentially we find a better way of doing this, and or through further education, now that we've got additional finance staff and things that are working with some of our providers to help them get a better understanding of what really does and does not qualify as an indirect cost, that we may be able to come back and relook at this policy in the future. But in an effort to have fairness across the board, we recognize that there will be some people that will be kind of unnecessarily burdened from this because they're already have a clear understanding of what the unnecessary costs are and things. But there are others, unfortunately, that don't have that clarity and understanding, and we've continued, in spite of trying to work with some of these organizations, continue to get some items attempted to be passed through our very close scrutiny of Ms. Tammy and her staff there, that I think would have a hard time being justified as an indirect cost, or even a legitimate cost at all for the board to be reimbursing. But further comments or input, either staff or board? Okay, with that in mind, we'll call the question then. Those in favor of Resolution 2616 as submitted. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Now, legal report from Ms. Fry and/or Sally.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. There's no substantive legal matters to report to the board. I will just note that New World Believers has retained counsel that's in contact with our office. I see this as good news, so that we'll have some ability to pre-suit negotiate perhaps return of the vehicles that the board authorized last meeting that we take action to recover, and also resolve any questions or complaints they have regarding their reimbursement request. So we are in touch with each other's offices about how to proceed, whether it be through counsel or some sort of short mediation with the parties, and we will report back to the board when we have an update there.
Madam Counsel, how much do you anticipate it's going to cost to recover those vehicles?
Cost, legal cost, obviously filing fee along with our time. I mean, certainly I can say with confidence it's going to exceed likely the value of the vehicles, which is why we're eager to resolve it pre-suit.
Right, yeah, and that's my thought, with those vehicles being that whole, I don't think that it's good stewardship to spend more money on legal fees pursuing some vehicles that, quite frankly, have outlived their use. I mean, there's no useful life of those vehicles. So, I mean, it would be sad if we spent thousands of dollars in legal fees to go get vehicles that we're never going to use. And so, I mean, I would love to know the anticipated amount or how much. I mean, we've already spent time on this case, on those vehicles, researching it, and to look at how much we're spending.
Yeah,
on
I don't
recovering
see it being less than $10,000, which certainly, like I said, I said this to the board at the last meeting. I'm mindful that it doesn't make a lot of fiscal sense to outspend the value of what you're seeking to recover on a lawsuit. That's the same advice I'd give any private client as well. So I'm eager that we will resolve it pre-suit. I know that one of the reasons why the board wanted to look at moving forward on further recovery action was the need for transportation in the community. So despite the fact that these are vehicles, we might be able to repurpose them. And so I know that that was a high level of interest from the board, just because transportation is such an issue in the community. But I will say, although the board has authorized us to move forward with litigation if necessary, we certainly are not going to do so without coming back and discussing where we are and the expense associated, just so the board knows.
Okay, and I would appreciate it if you would bring it back. And I certainly was not here, did not vote. I want to be on official record. I certainly do not support spending that much money to recover those vehicles. And anybody that does, I just hope that they would be on record knowing that those vehicles are not going to be used by any other organization, because they are not in good working order from what I understand. And so before we would do that, I certainly would say that there should be an evaluation of those vehicles, because if we spend $10,000, $15,000 to get vehicles that we can't repurpose, then that certainly is not good stewardship. So I just want to officially be on the record saying I don't support that. Thanks.
I would just say we don't know the conditions of the vans yet. We've asked for that information without cooperation. So if we can just do what we're doing and moving forward. But I've had no less than 5 providers call and ask if we were repurposing those vans, that they need them. So
Well, they're sitting outside of Hoops, and some of them are 10-plus years old with over 200,000 miles on them, from what I understand.
Well, it depends on how they're cared for, too. I mean, so
That's fine. Listen, I'm going to be on record saying I don't support it, and so if someone else supports it, then go.
There are folks that are asking and would take the older vans, just so you know.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to break your best friend is to give them a used car.
Before we end, I want to say congratulations to Megan. We all need your autograph. We're grateful that you're our attorney, so thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Any further business come before the board? If not, we will stand adjourned at 10:10. Thank you for your attendance and participation input.